Hello, folks. Welcome to Education Matters. Today we have Anne-Marie Banfield with us from Cornerstone Action, and she's going to be bringing us a very important topic about an event that's going to be happening in Hooksett, New Hampshire. And the event is called Practical Federalism, How the Federal Government is Silencing the People. Welcome, Anne-Marie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right, here we go. This caught my eye. You posted it on Facebook. I says, okay, what do we have going here? Cornerstone Action is going to be a sponsor.
Yep.
And many others as well. I guess I'll name them. The forum is sponsored by American Principles Project, Breitbart News, and Cornerstone Action.
Right. Yep.
Okay. Well, I brought you here so you could tell us what's going on with this forum here.
Well, first of all, it's November 22nd, so it's coming up pretty soon. It's from 10 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock in the evening. It's at SNHU. So please go register. And you can register at American Principles Project. If you just go to their website, you can click on, I think you can see it behind us. You can click on that you'll see a picture of it on the website. And you click on there, and then it'll take you to all the information, who's going to be speaking, and we're going to add speakers. I think we're still working out some of the speakers, and then you can register there. There's a $10 fee, and that is to cover lunch, because lunch is included. If you cannot afford the $10, or you know maybe things are tight right now, contact me directly through my email address, which is abanfield, B-A-N-F-I-E-L-D, at nhcornerstone.org, and I will see if I can get you a complimentary ticket. We want as many people there as possible. We don't want that to hinder anybody.
Great.
But the topic is going to basically be federalism, and I don't think that a lot of people understand what this is all about. Unfortunately, I think that even kids graduating from school, college, really do not understand this issue, doesn't understand this topic. And that's why we thought that we would participate. American Principles Project did contact us and ask us to team up with them. Breitbart is covering it. And to kind of explore this topic. 2016 will be here soon enough. We're going to have presidential candidates coming up here to talk to us about why they should be president, and it would help to have individuals fully educated on this topic. So when these candidates come to speak, people like us who are in the audience who get that opportunity, I mean, that's the nice thing about living in New Hampshire is we get the opportunity to meet with these candidates. We can ask educated questions. For instance, if a governor from another state comes here to run for president, questions that people should be asking is, what did you do as governor to push back the federal government? And that's really what this topic is all about, is kind of going back to what this country was founded upon, and that was 50 states making their own decisions. When the decisions are made at the local and state level, you have people engaged, you have people involved, and they know better for their state than a lot of times bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. So that's really what the topic is about. It's about going back to, we've got this bloated federal government with more agencies, and, we see it in education. Because I've been on the show many times, we've talked about the federal intrusion into our schools through Common Core. You can see that people in Manchester and in New Hampshire are starting to see the ramifications of Common Core. So these are the problems that come when you give so much power to the federal government that's really reserved for the states. The 10th Amendment specifically clarifies that. But the problem is that the federal government has become so bloated and so large and so powerful that what ends up happening is the people are silenced because they're the ones making the decisions against what the people want. And so we're going to be talking about education at this forum. We're going to be talking about religious freedom, religious liberty. We're going to be talking about the Medicaid expansion, if you're interested in Obamacare and health care and how that has been impacted by the role of the federal government. If you need more information on that, I mean, some people may have already have their decisions made about that. But this is going to really go back to the roots of what this country was founded upon and how we've moved away from that model.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's very important. And I don't think the kids are learning it in school. So
Yeah.
hopefully a lot of students will come. There's high school students that could sit through this very well
Absolutely.
and learn about their government
Yep.
and the federal
It's a
overreach.
great point. Yep.
So we'll invite the students from the high schools to come or the colleges. It's going to
Yeah.
be at SNHU.
Yep.
And so that would be a good opportunity. So all they have to do is email you and
Yep.
you get a free ticket.
And get a free ticket. It's abanfield@nhcornerstone.org. ABANFIELD.
Great. So it says, just to go over a little bit, it will examine how the federal executive branch perverts the constitutional structure. And that's why I'm saying the kids in high school probably aren't learning too much about the Constitution. So,
That's a good point. A great question to ask your school board members and your administrators: are they requiring the kids before they graduate to read the Federalist Papers? These are things that parents can do just to make sure that their kids are getting some of this information. And you're right. I'm afraid that many of them are not. And we have a situation where you can see all across the country protests. People are protesting the government. You have OWS movement, OWS. You have all these movements that are becoming more and more vocal. And you have to ask yourself, why do you have to protest your government? If the power lies with the people, why do they have to go out and protest? The reason they have to go out and protest is because they've given so much of their power to the federal government. And now what you end up doing is you end up creating almost like a slave-like mentality amongst people, that they feel like they now have to go out and protest. In the campaign we had legislators, elected representatives, talking about, if you elect me, I can lower your interest rates on student loans. Well, that should be something that everybody says, why are we having to go to the federal government to beg and plead for them to lower our interest rates? This is really something that should be in the hands of the federal government. Those are the questions that people need to think about. And if you come to this forum, we're going to clarify why that's really not a good thing for this country.
well, the federal government took over the federal loans business, you might say. So the federal government is making the interest. And not the local bank.
Yep.
That used to be, or what other? Yeah, the local banks used to have student loans and student loan rates, and they were competitive a little bit. And so now the federal government took over.
Mm-hmm. Something as
we had
simple
NEEF.
as that.
Remember NEEF? And NEEF basically was almost put out of business, or they're servicing a few loans. New Hampshire student loans, NEEF, whatever it stands for, Education Fund, something. My daughter has a couple of loans from there. And they would service the loans. It's a nonprofit.
Right.
And, they would do their work of trying to help students to find loans to get them to school.
Right.
And they had speakers that would come in and help out doing that. But now the federal government's taken over.
Yep.
And now this nonprofit can't run, really, because...
And they've taken over the healthcare, education, in so many different ways that now, parents feel like they have no voice. They feel like, what can I do about this? I mean, Common Core is the perfect example. Parents are so frustrated with what they see going on in their school, and they feel like, they have no voice. The other thing I wanted to bring up is in this last campaign, we saw some commercials where one candidate was charging the other candidate for supporting abolishing the U.S. Department of Education, and I think that scares a lot of people because they're thinking, you can't eliminate the U.S. Department of Education because our kids are going to suffer in the public schools.
But we didn't always have that department.
That's right.
It only came in the 70s with President Carter.
Right.
So what did they do before that?
Right.
We had education, and it was fine.
And it was, yeah. And if you look at the scores, the amount of spending since that department has come into existence, the spending has gone up like that. And you can look at a Cato. Cato has a great graph, and it's CATO. If you just Google Cato school spending, you're going to see this graph where the spending goes up like this, but the scores basically stay the same. So there's been no improvements to public education with the amount of spending going up and with the Department of Education. Their budget is about $69 billion. And I think people need to think about, if you're sending all that money to Washington, D.C., so they can take a large chunk of it and use it for administrative and bureaucracy, and then what little gets doled out to the states comes with strings attached, and we see that with Common Core. So an elimination of the Department of Education would probably actually benefit the schools, because instead of them having to answer to the federal government, they would no longer have to do that. They would be, parents could have a voice again, and that's what, that's, I think, what people are starting to figure out. And that's one of the reasons why we want to have the forum, is to look at these issues, look at what would it be like, because
local control, maybe.
Right, exactly. And you have a lot of, there's a lot of moms out there who, kind of cringe at the thought of the department being shut down, but they need to think about, we have a state Department of Education, and we have a local school board, and we have parents. And that money, and you have a lot of teachers out there working in the classroom. Just think about if that money, instead of sending it to Washington, D.C., was actually put into our school classrooms. $69 billion put into
look
our
at
school
special
classrooms.
needs.
Right.
How much is the federal government funding? What's it,
I don't know the
20
exact amount.
40%? It's not the whole thing.
Right. Right.
But the state has to pick up
Right.
the special needs budget.
Yeah, that's how that normally starts. It normally starts that they're going to fund something, and then they start defunding it, and then you end up having to pay for it anyway. But these are the kinds of questions. If you're frustrated with your public schools, this is a great forum to come to listen to how most people don't realize the amount of waste, the number of bureaucracies just to get your schools running. That if we could eliminate a bureaucracy, what would that do? Is that something that's going to harm our schools? Is that something that's going to actually benefit them? I think it's important to really think about that. If your school is struggling for funds, and that $69 billion is going to the federal government and not to your classroom,
Right.
That's a real problem.
Right, and I think I'm reading here that the forum is also going to be touching upon land use policies. Like, is that regionalism?
I'm not sure who's covering that topic, but that, I think there's so many topics that are going to be covered that, that's another topic that
So
needs to be
those are
covered.
interested
Yeah.
in land use?
Yep.
And also onerous environmental policies.
Right.
So that'd be the EPA or, any of those regional agencies that are trying to control everything,
Right.
basically.
Right. I describe it as just, like over-regulation. I think that everybody understands that, there's common sense legislation, common
Clean
sense.
water.
Right. We all want the same thing. But when it becomes so oppressive on businesses, what happens is a lot of times it drives the small guys out of business. And
The taxation.
yeah, they don't have the money to fight these battles in the legislature. So what ends up happening is we end up with these large corporations. You have a lot of people who complain about, the corporations are so large. Well, a lot of times if you look at why that has happened, it has happened because of these overburden regulations that, a big company, it's just part of doing business. They can handle it. But these small guys out there who are, do not have that kind of funding, do not have that war chest that they can go to and pay lawyers and lobbyists. These are the kinds of topics that, it's especially for small business people, I think that they need to attend and they need to really think about.
It's a great forum.
Right.
It's a great forum. Well, that's terrific.
Yeah, we're going to have speakers from around New Hampshire. We want as many New Hampshire people involved as possible. There's going to be some national speakers, and just from different organizations, from taxpayer organizations. We're going to have some legislators attend who are concerned about federalism or the encroachment on it, and we're going to have we have a lot of people in the state who are very pro Second Amendment. We want to make sure that topic is covered too. So there's a variety of topics, not just education, but education will be one of them. And so I think that no matter who you are, if you're interested in this topic or this topic or this topic, it's probably going to cover something that you're interested in.
From 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. It's a long day, but it's worth it.
Lunch is included.
And coffee.
Yeah.
And probably a little breakfast.
I'm not really sure about that. I don't think so. But if you can't make it for the whole day, then leave. Leave early. It's not that big a deal. But go in online. Again, it's American Principles Project. If you just Google that, you will find a link to their website, and then you look for this picture right here. And when you see it, you click on that, and it'll take you to the registration page, and you can register there. If you need a complimentary ticket, contact me directly at abanfield@nhcornerstone.org, and I'll get you a complimentary ticket.
That's great. Let's see, there was something I was going to say. So there's going to be other people covering it for like the radio. Do you have some guest speakers here? Are they speakers, or are they just covering the audio on that? Will that be?
Well, like Jeff Chittister's pretty well known in New Hampshire. He's got a radio program, so he'll be covering it. I believe.
Will he be doing a podcast on that? Or
I know that
like
he
that?
talked about it on his Saturday program this past Saturday, and I think he's going to talk about it again this Saturday on his program to kind of get the information out there again. But we have Ed Nail from the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers Association. He's going to be one of the speakers. We've got several legislators I think lined up. I think. J.R. Hole is one of the speakers. He's a representative. And Dan Itze is a representative. He, I believe, is speaking. We have commitments, I believe, from also Senator Andy Sanborn, and his wife, probably Lori Sanborn. She's a state representative. Will be part of some of the discussions. And so we're trying to bring in people from around New Hampshire, but then again, there's a couple people outside New Hampshire. There's a Georgia State Senator, William Ligon, Ligon. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce his name. There's an Oklahoma State Representative, Jason Nelson, John Davidson of the Texas Policy Center, Steve Klein with the Wyoming Liberty Council, Utah State Representative Ken Ivory, and Emmett McGroarty from the American Principles Project. And I know Emmett at least does a great job of really explaining this topic really, really well. And I think people would be very interested in hearing what he has to say.
That's what I remembered I was going to say now. That there will be an agenda that will be coming out soon, no doubt, which will have the list of speakers and what time they're going to speak.
Right.
So if you can't come in the morning, maybe you can come in the afternoon.
Right.
You don't have to come at 10 o'clock.
Yep.
Right? If you have a speaker that's, there's 1 hour or something, and you want that, show up for that hour and get the ticket from Anne Marie and come when you can.
Yep, exactly.
That'd be great. But involvement is good, so terrific. Well, Emery, we have a few more minutes left. Do you want to go into your next topic that you brought us?
Sure.
Or, I don't want to cut you off.
No, I think we've covered that pretty well. Well, I think that since we've talked about education in the past and Common Core and all of that and what's going on in Manchester, and I know that the mayor has been very concerned about the Smarter Balanced Assessment, I just wanted to bring it to the attention of parents that the schedule has come out on when the Smarter Balance is going to be administered. It's going to begin on Monday, March 16th. So we've got a little bit of a ways before it's actually going to be administered to the kids. But I wanted to give parents a heads up as far as when it's going to be coming, when they need to know when the testing begins. And this is the summative assessment. This is an annual assessment. There are many assessments. I think we've even heard from a Manchester teacher in New Hampshire, or in Manchester, that has really blown the lid off of the over-testing going on in Manchester. And people really need to listen to her because this is a common problem and a common theme. And
And we've heard from the teachers in Nashua
yeah,
who took the test and gave their report and said,
yeah,
this is not
Not
ready for
good.
prime time.
No.
This is not
No.
good for the kids.
no.
And they've had some pretty strong words
Right,
about that.
right. So it's a 12-week testing window. It starts March 16th, and it ends on June 5th. And so what parents around the country are doing is they are organizing to refuse the test. So if, great if your school district wants to fight the implementation or the use of this test in your school, but you know what? Parents still have some power, and parents need to utilize that power. If you have an issue with the over-testing, if you have an issue with the standardized tests, and these standardized tests are not, they don't receive, the kids don't receive a grade for them. So if they miss this test, it's not going to hurt them in any way. They're refusing. The parents are just saying, you know what? I'm not going to be part of this. This is not good for our public schools. This is not good for our children. We're just going to simply refuse it. And to the parents who might feel a little uncomfortable about not allowing their children to take this test, I would suggest then, at the minimum, sit in on that classroom when your kids are taking that test. Watch that. Observe. I have genuine concerns if my kids were in the public schools. I'll be honest with you, they would just simply not take this test. However, I know enough about this that even if I wasn't sure about refusing, I would sit in on that classroom and I would observe those kids, because what we're hearing about what is going on with this testing, and maybe some kids are fine with it, but we're hearing about kids who are just overstressed, crying in tears from teachers. At least go sit in and observe it.
So if your child is having a meltdown, you'll be there to
Right.
do what you have to do for
Right.
that child, for your
And
child.
speak up.
And
You know,
say, okay, my
yeah.
child's done. We're going home, or
Right.
we're going to the library, or we're going to the cafeteria or something.
Yeah.
Basically, for those parents who want to opt out, basically it's a refusal form
Right.
in New Hampshire. We don't have an opt-out provision in the law yet, but you can refuse the Smarter Balance assessment by, you can go to my Facebook page, Deborah Ulster, and you can find a form there you can print out. It's the Smarter Balance refusal form. Or you can go to Manchester Parents Against Common Core. I posted it there also.
Is that on Facebook?
On Facebook,
Facebook.
right.
Okay.
Or they can just call my phone number and I can email it to them.
So it's not too soon to start thinking about
Right.
this. And this assessment, there is a cooperative agreement between Smarter Balance Consortium and the federal government that all information is going to be given to the federal government. So this is a way of gathering information on students. And I had an interesting discussion with a parent yesterday who said, well, Anne Marie, I looked at the what was online, the sample test, and I didn't see any data mining. And I said, well, first of all, what's online is not the actual test. Number one. Number two, the way the test questions are set up, that's the information that they're trying to gather. For instance, this might be part of the English language arts assessment. So they're going to ask the child, they're going to phrase a question and ask them about maybe something that they feel strongly about, or something about their value system. So it's not going to always,
embedded.
Yeah, it's not going to jump out
Yeah.
and say, "Do you believe in man-made global warming?" We'll use a hot topic. They're not going to put it so bluntly like that, but they're going to phrase the question to figure out where that child stands on those issues, those political issues, without making it so obvious. So those are the things that people are concerned about, gathering this information, put it into a dossier on a child, for what are they going to use that for in the future.
Of course, they say at the New Hampshire DOE, we're the strictest with information. We're not going to have your child's name associated with that test that the child's taking. But if it says in grade 5, so-and-so teacher's classroom, 20% of the children answered the question this way or that way, we need to remediate the class because it's over 10%, or whatever the matrix is going to be, okay? It is determining the education of your child.
That's right.
In one way,
That's right.
shape, or form.
Because if your child answers it wrong, that that the government believes that you should value or you should have this belief, then you're right. They're going to go in and remediate. And I would also argue that anybody who's involved with data, the tech industry knows that 3 data points on a child and they can be identified. So this idea that anything is anonymous, when you are talking to somebody in the data or in the technology field about how anonymous you are, they laugh. They laugh at that because they know there's no such thing as really being anonymous. So this assessment is going to collect information on that you might not agree with, and since you're not going to see the questions ahead of time, it might be too late.
Well, there'll be questions about your family or family life, and it's none of their business.
Right. And those questions have been asked in the past. There's a national assessment that was given prior to the Smarter Balance. It's called the NAEP. And there were actual questions on there. Do you have a washer and dryer in your home? They asked about books. What kind of books were in things that the difference is back then. There was a statute, there was a law, it's called the FERPA law, that was in place that protected the student privacy. So if the information was taken, there was a law in place to protect the privacy. That law has been gutted by the Obama administration. So now this information can be shared with different departments in the federal government. So if this information is shared with, let's say, the U.S. Department of Labor, by the time that child graduates and they go to apply for a job, where's that information going? These are the concerns that everybody has, since there's no more privacy protections in place and they're data mining information on your student.
Right. Well, we'll have to pick up this topic again, and I know we're coming to the end of the show soon here, but folks, if you need information, you can go to Facebook. I know some people are averse to going to Facebook, but or actually, Stop Common Core in NH.
Yep. StopCommonCoreNH.org.
There is a web page
Yep.
that you can go to for some information. Or New Hampshire Families for Education.
Right,
There's
that's a
tons
good
of
one.
information. You can even call Doris Hohensee if you need to talk to her personally. She'll take your call.
Yep.
Or email her. There's many ways of getting in touch with us, and so just a little effort, will get you there. So Facebook and websites, student privacy, refusing the test,
Yep.
coming to the practical Federalism event. This show was a pretty good show, Anne-Marie.
Yeah. Good information.
There's a lot of info here. All right, I didn't get the wrap up, but I think we're done for today. And we'll see you next time. I'm sure maybe we'll do some more follow-up on this forum and see how it went.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll have some videos out of that, and maybe we can
great.
play them on this show.
Yep.
So, folks, take care till next week. Appreciate it.